The dining hall of the old city hotel glowed with warm golden light. Crystal glasses shone softly. Quiet piano music floated through the room like a memory from another time. At the long dinner table sat 4 people whose lives were about to change. At the head of the table sat Harold Whitmore, age 72. A billionaire known across the city. His white hair was neat. His suit perfect. His laughter loud and confident. Beside him sat his son Daniel Whitmore, age 36. Tall, serious and tense. Daniel held the hand of the woman next to him as if protecting her from the world. That woman was Amara Brooks, age 32. Her quiet dignity filled the room even though she spoke very little. Her soft pink dress reflected the warm lights above. Her eyes held calm strength and a quiet story. Behind them 2 women watched from another table. Linda Carter, age 48, and Sophia Mendez, age 45. Friends of the Whitmore family. They whispered softly as they observed the scene unfolding. The evening had started politely. Wine poured. Dinner served. Small talk drifting across the table like slow-moving clouds. But then Harold Whitmore leaned back in his chair. Looked at Amara. And laughed. A deep, rich laugh that carried across the room. He pointed toward Daniel and spoke loudly. "So son, this is the woman you want to marry." Daniel straightened his back. His voice calm but firm. "Yes, father. This is Amara." Harold laughed again, even louder. Then he looked directly at Amara. His eyes sharp. His tone careless. "My son is a brilliant man. Harvard graduate. Runs half my companies. Yet he wants to marry someone who barely speaks." Harold leaned closer. "Tell me, young lady. Are you shy? Or simply dumb?" At the other table Linda covered her mouth in shock. Sophia glanced nervously toward Amara. Daniel clenched his fist. "Father, that is enough." But Harold waved his hand as if dismissing a small inconvenience. "Relax, Daniel. I am only asking a simple question." He turned again to Amara. "You sit there silent all evening. You barely say a word. You do not look like someone who belongs in this world." The billionaire chuckled again. "Maybe my son finds quiet entertaining. Maybe he thinks silence is wisdom. Or maybe..." Harold leaned back with a grin. "Maybe she is just dumb." The word hung in the air. Heavy. Ugly. Unkind. Daniel looked at Amara with worry. But Amara did not react immediately. She sat very still. Her hands folded gently on the table. Her face calm like deep water. The room seemed to slow. Sometimes silence is not weakness. Sometimes silence is patience. And patience has its own quiet power. Finally Amara lifted her eyes. She looked at Harold with respect, not anger. Her voice when it came was soft and steady. "Mr. Whitmore. May I tell you a small story?" Harold shrugged with amusement. "A story? Well, this should be interesting. Go ahead." Amara nodded slowly. "When I was 10 years old, my grandmother used to sit on a wooden porch every evening. She would watch the sun disappear behind old oak trees. One day I asked her why she never argued with people who insulted her. Why she stayed quiet when others were loud. My grandmother smiled. She said something I never forgot. She said, 'Child, the loudest drum in the band is often the one that knows the least music. The quiet violin knows more.'" Harold raised one eyebrow. Amara continued gently. "My grandmother also told me something else. She said real intelligence does not rush to prove itself. It listens first. It watches. It understands people. Then it speaks only when the moment matters." Daniel squeezed her hand gently. The room was very quiet now. Even the piano music seemed softer. Amara looked at Harold again. "Mr. Whitmore, you think I am silent because I have nothing to say. But silence can come from many places. Sometimes from fear. Sometimes from wisdom. And sometimes from respect." Harold leaned forward, curious now. "Respect?" Amara nodded. "Yes, respect. This dinner is the first time I have met the father of the man I love, I believed it was more important to listen to you than to compete with you. Linda and Sophia exchanged glances at their table. Harold tapped the table slowly. Still amused. Still skeptical. Interesting answer, young lady. But listening and speaking politely does not change reality. My world is built on intelligence power decisions. Tell me, what have you built? Amara looked down for a moment. Then she slowly reached into her purse. She placed a small tablet on the table. Her movements calm and graceful. Daniel watched her quietly. Harold looked mildly curious. Amara turned the tablet toward Harold. On the screen appeared a series of photographs. Schools. Community centers. Young children reading books. Harold frowned slightly. What is this? Amara spoke softly. These are learning centers in 5 cities. Each one built to help children from poor neighborhoods. Children who cannot afford good schools. Harold studied the screen more closely. Amara continued. 4 years ago I started a small education program. At first it was just 1 classroom in a church basement. 20 students. 1 teacher. Now we help more than 3,000 children each year. Linda leaned forward in her chair listening. Sophia whispered, wow. Amara kept speaking gently. Many of those children are now in college. Some want to become teachers. Some engineers. Some doctors. Harold looked up slowly. And you started this? Amara nodded. Yes. But that is not the part one am proud of. She paused briefly. The part that matters most is that every child in our program promises to help another child one day. So kindness grows. Like a tree planting more trees. The billionaire stared at the screen again. His expression slowly changing. Daniel spoke quietly. Father Amara holds 2 degrees in education and economics. She turned down corporate jobs to build that program. Harold blinked. Amara continued. Your son has quietly supported the program for the past year. But he never asked for credit. Because he believes the same thing my grandmother believed. Good work speaks for itself. Silence returned to the table. The heavy kind that forces people to think. Harold looked at Amara carefully now. Not with mockery. But with curiosity. You built all this. Amara smiled gently. Not alone. No one builds anything meaningful alone. Teachers. Volunteers. Parents. Students. All voices matter. Especially voices people often ignore. She paused. That is why Daniel suggested something beautiful. A program called the Black Voices. A platform where young students can share their stories. Their dreams. Their ideas. Because when people feel heard, they begin to believe in themselves. Daniel nodded quietly. Harold slowly leaned back in his chair. The same chair where he had laughed only minutes earlier. But the laughter was gone now. He looked around the restaurant. At the warm lights. At the people talking quietly. At his son. At Amara. Finally he spoke. His voice softer than before. You remind me of someone. Amara waited. Harold looked toward the window. Long ago, before my companies, before the money. My mother worked 2 jobs. She believed education was the most powerful gift a person could give. She used to say, Harold, if you ever succeed, remember to lift someone else with you. He exhaled slowly. I built businesses. But perhaps I forgot the rest. Amara spoke gently. It is never too late to remember. The older man looked at her again. This time with something new in his eyes. Respect. Maybe even humility. After a long moment he stood up. The movement surprised everyone. Harold extended his hand toward Amara. Young lady. I owe you an apology. I judged you before I understood you. That is a mistake even old men should admit. Amara stood and shook his hand warmly. Thank you, Mr. Whitmore. Apologies show wisdom, not weakness. Linda clapped quietly from her table. Sophia smiled widely. Daniel looked relieved. Harold sat down again, but now his posture was different. Less pride. More thought. He studied the photos again. Then looked up. How much does it cost to build one of these centers? Amara tilted her head slightly. About $200,000. Harold nodded slowly. Then he smiled. A small thoughtful smile. Build 10 more. Daniel nearly choked on his water. Amara blinked in surprise. Harold raised a finger gently. But only if you promise something. Amara waited. You will allow an old man to visit one of these classrooms. I would like to hear those children speak. Their voices. Their dreams. Amara smiled warmly. That would make them very happy. Harold chuckled softly. Perhaps it will make me happy too. Daniel placed his arm around Amara. Pride shining in his eyes. The dinner that had begun with laughter and insult ended with understanding. Sometimes wisdom arrives quietly. Sometimes it speaks through patience. And sometimes the calmest voice in the room carries the greatest truth. That night Harold Whitmore left the restaurant thinking about something new. Not profits. Not power. But possibility. Because the world does not change through loud voices alone. It changes when people finally listen. And that is the quiet strength behind stories like this. Stories that remind us dignity, patience, and compassion can turn even harsh moments into bridges of understanding. Thank you for listening to this story on the Black Voices. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And write your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. Because every voice has a story worth hearing. And together those voices can change the world.